Hello, thank you for joining me. I'm going to do a presentation on Freud and his psychosocial, psychosexual development. First off, we're going to do a little bit of history on Freud. His background was that Freud was born in 1856 in the Czech Republic in a town called Freiburg. He had 8 siblings in which he was the oldest. He was Austrian and of Jewish descent, but he proclaimed agnostic views. During this time period, anti-Semitism was rampant and Jewish men were seen as inferior, especially if they were circumcised. And according to Punzi, Freud did not want his theories of psychoanalysis to be looked upon as inferior because of his ethnicity. However, this may have played a role in his views towards women as well. Freud believed women held penis envy that would fit into his Oedipal complex of his theories. Even though Freud's views on women were considered condescending towards them, his work with Bertha Panheim, also referred to as Patient O, and Ida Bauer, who Freud referred to as Dora, had revolutionized talk therapy. Anna O suffered from hallucinations. Dora was suffering from hysteria. However, later in a book called Dora, there may have been some gender and sexuality issues. There are many things written about Freud, but there is little on how he had rejected his Jewish background. However, he may have overcome some of the prejudices that he faced when he and his family escaped persecution and moved to Vienna, where he would live most of his life. He did eventually earn a medical degree in 1885 and held a position at the university in Vienna as a lecturer. He had several theories, but one of his first published theories in 1891 was one on aphasia. He had written a paper describing aphasia as a loss of speech related to a brain injury. He stated that speech would theoretically come back spontaneously as soon as a person would talk about that event. Even though Freud had refuted several of the proven ideas back then, and a lot of his research was very hard to reproduce and validate, his hypotheses and work done in this published paper would lay the foundation for Freud's theory for psychoanalysis, the unconscious mind, and how treatments for a single person should be individualized and distinguished from one another. Psychoanalysis theory of a personality became about because of the unconscious becoming aware of the unconscious. Psychosexual stages was split up into the oral, anal, phallic, latent, and genital, and he related those to the ego and superego as they developed. He also had a theory of dreams. He was famous for interpreting dreams. He believed dreams were yearnings from the unconscious mind. In fact, he had interpreted a dream called A Dream of Irma's Injection, where she is receiving ghosts in a large hall, but she is having pain in her throat, abdomen, and belly. They call a professional colleague to look in her throat, and they see what appears to be a structure stuck in her throat that looks like the inside of the ear. This is where the dream ends. They then call another colleague, and he diagnoses her with an infection. Freud believed that dreams were an extension of the subconscious, more specifically the id. He thought the subconscious were expressions of repressed impulses and sexual unwanted desires that were trying to express themselves through dreams. The male genitalia, any extended objects like umbrellas, sticks, trees, all could represent the phallus in dreams. Also, on the other hand, the objects that would represent female genitalia in dreams would be objects that needed to be filled, like holes, caves, shoes, mouth, etc. Freud thought there were many sexual symbols in dreams. He also thought dreams were short repeats of the past day's happenings. He thought dreams occurred because of wish fulfillments. It was common if our achievements and our hopes in our daily lives failed, it would be natural to assume it would appear in our dreams. Freud's theory of the unconscious mind was split up into the id, ego, and superego. And I like this representation of the conscious mind above the surface, where the unconscious was below the surface, because unconscious are things that we are unaware of and cannot become aware of. So that would be below the surface of the water, where the conscious mind is above. And that's things in the mental activity that we know about. Furthermore, in the 1920s to the 1923, another one of Freud's theories discusses human behavior in terms of the unconscious mind and breaks it down into the id, ego, and superego. The id is the first to appear because it surfaces in our childhood, and it usually is referred to as our instincts and as something we deal with on a daily basis. When we start to mature and grow, we begin to see the next behavior appear, the ego, usually between 3 to 4 years of age. This stage appears in an attempt to control the id, and we begin to see defense mechanisms surface in order to influence our compulsions and to be socially acceptable. Next, the superego emerges around 5, and it censors the id and then tries to get the ego to conduct in a virtuous manner. This is part of the personality of the ego that develops when doing the good acts, the correct acts, and the acts that are acceptable by society and by parents. Obeying these rules can lead to feelings of pride, value, accomplishments, and living up to the standard of who we are striving to be. Disobeying or breaking these rules can lead to guilt and shame, and falling short of the standard of who we want to be and receiving disapproval from parents and society. Psychoanalysis is a treatment involving an analyst and an individual with emotional problems. The patient relives her life story by transferring to the analyst feelings and attitudes she originally experienced in her relationships with other people. This type of treatment is long and can take years to see results, but the analyst and the individual can establish a working relationship and continue to meet in a safe environment, explore, and talk about ongoing issues where the individual is able to amend, reject, or supplement the analysis if needed at any time throughout the session. This type of treatment is long and can take years to see results, but the analyst and the individual can establish a working relationship and continue to meet in a safe environment, explore, and talk about ongoing issues where the individual is able to amend, reject, or supplement the analysis if needed at any time throughout the session. Freud advanced the 5 stages of psychosexual development, which included the oral, phallic, anal, latency, genital. The oral stage develops in infancy when babies put everything in their mouths. They develop normally with sucking through breastfeeding and swallowing, and this continues from 0 to 2 years. Delayed gratification in this stage can be a good thing, leading to babies learning to soothe themselves when they are crying. But in adults, it can lead to poor habits like smoking and nail biting. The anal stage is a process in which the infant expels or withholds feces. Delayed gratification in this stage could lead to constipation. But also with delayed gratification, when it comes to potty training, can lead to obsessively organized or neatness, anal retentive. Or it can lead to reckless, careless, or disorganized anal explosive. The phallic stage is fixation on the penis for boys and clitoris for girls, and normal sexual masturbation. This is where The phallic stage is, okay, this is where Freud introduced the Oedipus complex for boys and Electra complex for girls. The Oedipus complex refers to the boy's desire for his mother and his need to want to kill his father. The Electra complex describes the girl's sexual desire for her father. There is also what Freud refers to as castration anxiety for the boy and penis envy for the girl. The boy fears losing his identity at the hands of his father, and the girl is upset at not having power and a penis. Next comes the latent stage between 6 and 12 years of age, where there is little to no sexual motivation. Activities then are diverted so that social skills can be developed. Peer relationships are being established, and there is a consolidation of values. Lastly, there is a genital stage. This takes place in puberty and is where there is sexual intercourse. It is also a time of sexual experimentation for adults in their 20s, but also for adults to progress into loving, monogamous, one-to-one relationships. Freud did not really address homosexuality formally in his theories. However, there was a correspondence between Freud and a mother of a homosexual boy in 1935, where Freud corresponded with her in a letter and gave her references of famous men in history that may have been homosexual men. Even over time, his perspective on homosexuality and bisexuality had matured, never swaying much on his views. Here are my references, and thank you for joining me in this presentation. Goodbye.